today I am thrilled to have an amazing podcaster, author, and also friend, Nicole Christina, here with me. Welcome, Nicole.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here with you.
This is so exciting. Can you tell a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've actually been a psychotherapist for 32 years. I never thought I would ever say those words, but here I am. And I specialize now in eating disorders, disordered eating, and all of that, and especially around midlife. So that is actually trending. And if people want to know more about that, I can give some resources. And I've been a podcaster for 6.5 years, Zestful Aging, and I used my clinical experience to write a book called Not Just Chatting, How to Become a Master Podcast Interviewer, because I sort of interview people for a living, really, in a sense, clinically, and I thought I could add something to the conversation. So that was really fun. And now I do a lot of guesting on podcasts to talk about both ends of the mic, hosting and guesting. And I get to hang out with people like Jen Hardy. So it's a win-win.
I love it. And now psychotherapy, I was a psych major in college. And that is the most intense schooling you can do, right? I mean, you went through a lot of school.
I went through a lot of schooling, and they give you, I often say they didn't teach me this in school. And, with COVID and all, I'm still telehealth. And so there's pluses and minuses. The pluses are I can walk my dogs and wear like yucky sweatpants as long as I'm, from the waist up okay. The minuses is you really don't get as good a sense of how people are doing, especially if they're engaging in some eating and exercise behaviors. You kind of want to see them in the flesh. So that's been a bit of a detriment. But all in all, it's a lot of people looking for services. So not running out of a job anytime soon. So I've sort of merged them in some way because Zestful Aging, I do quite a bit about, what aging is like, the joys and the challenges. And many of the challenges have to do about, for many women, how our bodies change.
And I know, a lot of the women I talk to, and personally, as things are changing, we try to make, I used to say, oh, when I get older, I'm going to look at every wrinkle as, a memory or as whatever.
Badge of honor.
Right. But then when they happen, you're thinking, oh,
what is this?
It's a little harder to make peace with. And I'll tell you what, Mother Nature is no woman. That's what I keep telling everybody. Oh my goodness. But So you were saying that, and I found this fascinating, that eating disorders are perking back up in midlife. And I think that's something I honestly had never heard before you mentioned it.
It's a little niche. And I think, COVID was no friend to folks who were already struggling a bit. But, there's a lot of research, and I don't want to go into a whole dissertation about it, but basically there's a big vacuum often. And I think you'll understand this, Jen, sometimes our kids are launching, some of them are not launching, but there's a lot of changes, a lot of adjustments, a lot of losses. Our identity's all whacked out. You mentioned about, Mother Nature is tough and not a woman. And especially if you've been given a lot of attention for your physical beauty, and then all of a sudden people aren't looking at you anymore. It is so devastating, to women who have had a lot of attention for that. So there's just a ton of adjustments, and it's a very easy and accessible way to make yourself sort of feel better. I'm only eating clean, no carbs, no this, no that. I'm at the gym. It just gives the world feels more safe and controllable. And in the world that we currently live in, God, who doesn't crave that? The problem is that if you become so hyper-focused on what you're eating and your exercise, you're life really shrinks, and that becomes your relationship rather than your relationship with your loved ones. So I call it the backstabbing friend, because it seems tempting and, like, oh, I'll just eat kale or I'll just eat organic chicken. And it seems like a great idea. And you're the boss until it becomes the boss of you, and you can't go to a birthday party because they're serving cake. And then we're in a situation where, I'm in a trap now. And it's very painful. And I have great compassion for women and men who are stuck in that trap.
Yeah. And it's a lot of it is control. Cause I know as someone who deals with anorexia, who has dealt with it my whole life, and it had gotten better. And I was finally at peace with my body until a doctor told me I was overweight and had to work on that. And I had finally, I actually did make peace. I think part of it for me growing up in Los Angeles in the 80s,
Oh
you can never be
boy.
too rich or too thin. Everyone would always tell me I have no waist and my nose is too big, and like all these things, and this constant feedback of negativity. And I literally moved my girls out of there to leave that. And I think now that I
Mhm.
live somewhere where women in their 80s are walking around in bikinis and they don't care what they look like,
I love
a
it.
whole different thing. And I finally, and should it be from external? No, it should be internal. I know that, but I think it's easier to make peace and I think
Yeah,
if you're
for
listening,
sure.
we really have to stop comparing that. And I
Oh
think
yeah,
comparison, that
that's
is really right at the root of a lot of these things is,
and
um,
finding something that's meaningful that has nothing to do with how you look. Like, I'm really into knitting. I'm into gardening. I'm into making, uh, good good food. I love my dogs. I love to travel with my girlfriends. I play tennis. I mean, it's a lot of stuff that's not about, oh my gosh, my waist looks like this. Or as long as I can put a tennis skirt on. Everybody has, this age, we all have bumps and weird stuff coming out.
right?
So, but yeah, I think that's really true. I mean, of course, when we grew up, there wasn't Instagram and Kim Kardashian and people doing all of this stuff. So it's so different now. But what I talk about is this, like, it's a rebellious act to say, I'm not playing that game. I am not playing that game. I'm going to go out, take a walk, look at the sun, and be super into gratitude. And, like, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And it's not worrying about the fact that I ate a piece of banana bread this morning. Um,
And
you
when
know,
you put it in perspective like that, I mean, oh my gosh, right? Why spend hours a day thinking
mhm.
or letting ourselves feel guilty because we had a chip?
Yes.
Just live
Oh,
your life.
yeah, yeah, for sure. And I always believe that if we just wash ourselves in guilt because we had whatever it was, a chip, donut, or whatever, that guilt is, I think, probably worse for us and our psyche and our mental health and our spirit than the chip that we ate. So, if you're going to fall into a spiral of self-loathing, that that's not helpful in any way.
No, not at all. So what would be a couple of tips you could give for a woman, maybe, this age, right? We've got
Mm,
children, like you said, children launching or not launching.
or not launching.
Husbands that have left or checked out. Unfortunately, a lot of them, they might still be there, but you might have had an idea of what retirement or this, empty nest would look like with your spouse, and it might not look like that.
I always use the example of, you may want to go on a hot air balloon and they're sitting in their recliner watching the History Channel. At some point, it's like, we got to renegotiate this. And what we're finding, and you probably know this, Jen, because you're really keyed into the community, is that many women over 50 are traveling by themselves. It's the biggest uptick in travel, and companies are quite aware of this. So you'll see a lot of advertising, like Road Scholar is one of them, just for women. We're going to go to the really cool places. And it's not saying, you don't love your partner. It's just saying, I want to go somewhere. You don't want to go. I'm going to go with my posse and I'll tell you about it when I get back. I'm doing that as well. In Spain, my husband's like, I want to go to Alaska. I'm like, go. I'll see you when you get back. So yeah, so in terms of advice, what I would say is, what really feels deeply meaningful for you? And if we fast forward towards our last breaths, not to be morbid, but like, can we think about what would we regret if we hadn't done it? And so I'm talking about stuff that's more substantial than your dress size. I'm talking about, are you being with the people that you care about? Are you learning new things? Are you staying curious about, like, there's so much out there to learn. I have particular training, but I don't know about this. I don't know about this. I belong to this knitting club, and these people are bringing in like things I've never seen, felting, this one, that one. They're doing these amazing things, and I'm just sitting there kind of knitting and just to learn. Not that I'm going to go ahead and become, raise sheep, but it's interesting to hear about other people and what they're doing. So I would say, how do you want the rest of your life to look? And it's probably not going to be counting calories. That's probably not going to be, that's going to make me feel alive and purposeful and, really filling up this very precious time. Probably not like, she was the perfect size 6. Wow, what a life. That's probably, if you look at it in that perspective, that's just not what most people would do. So it's not easy. And I like to people talk about body positivity. I'm actually like, if we can get to neutral, that would be good. And I talked to another person who does this kind of work, and we talked about a constructive relationship with your body. I don't know that we can go from like, oh my God, my cellulite or my stretch marks to, hey, I'm so in love with my body. That's a big ask. But what I'd like to do is just help people move the needle a little bit to, okay, I can appreciate that these legs are going to carry me, or this body that's birthed these babies, or, had these surgeries or gone through chronic illness or whatever, is still, there for me. It's my greatest ally. So I'm trying to be more realistic about what, it's a pretty long journey to body positivity. I think that in the media, that's felt a bit, how shall I say, it's a buzzword, and it also feels pretty hard. That's not acknowledged.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think everybody's really different, Um, uh, I think it's really helpful to listen to podcasts. And I'm not even talking about Zestful Aging, but there's a lot of podcasts about there that are really supportive with women in some kind of recovery, and also calling out these advertisers saying, we are so tired of this anti-aging BS. The only one that's helping is you, because you're making money off shaming us. So I would really invite people. And my clients will come back and say, oh, you got to listen to this episode. It was really, really helpful. I would do a deep dive into the podcasts that are for women in some kind of recovery, as some supportive, sort of process that could be so helpful. I mean, just to put in your ears while, if you're taking a walk or gardening or whatever you're doing. So that's like kind of having your own little therapist on call. You don't feel freakish. You feel like, well, I'm not the only one. And we're mammals. We want to be with our group, right? We don't want to
Yeah.
feel alone and isolated. And that cannot be overstated. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Well, I so appreciate you sharing this, because it's so important. And what would be if, let's say someone is feeling very overwhelmed
Mm-hmm.
with these thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
talking to someone is definitely a good idea, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, again, not to be a downer, but eating disorders have the highest mortality rate of any psych diagnoses, and we could probably imagine why. And so for sure, I mean, I think there if it's taking up a lot of real estate in your brain, if it's really shrinking your social life because you don't want to go to the beach, because you don't want to wear a bathing suit, or you don't want to go out to lunch with friends because you don't want to, there's a lot of this. I think that would be helpful. That being said, there's not that many of us out there who specialize in this, because it's a tough subspecialty, and there's a lot of how shall I say it? It's a long road. It can be a really long road. What I would suggest, and you can certainly put this in the show notes, is NEDA, NEDA.
Okay.
And that's the National Eating Disorder Association. That's kind of like the mothership. And there's tons of other places, like there's, ones for bulimia, anorexia, and all this, but NEDA is a good place to start. And then there's a book that I've read hundreds of books, and there's probably hundreds I haven't read, but there's one in particular I really love. It's called Body Kindness, and it's by Rebecca Skitchfield. She has a podcast, I think it's still running, called Body Psych. I actually interviewed her a couple years ago on Zestful Aging. The reason I like this book is it's super accessible, and it's just presented in a way that it's not academic, it's not clinical. It's just really gets to the heart of how we take care of ourselves and how we treat ourselves and how we show up in the world. She just did a beautiful job. So that's one of my favorite books.
Is there something, not a diet, but a guideline, so for people who do overthink everything they put in their mouth, do you have anything simple on that line?
Well, I hate to admit this to you, Jen, but I'm as confused as everybody else. I mean, because all the experts say different. Some are like, you can only get your protein from meat. No, you can't. Look at the weightlifters who are all vet. So I'm like, oh my goodness. So I love that question, because I have asked that of people on my show, because I'm like, please help me understand this. So here's the simple way to start, which I think is kind of brilliant because it's so simple. Stay away from ultra processed foods. They call them UPFs. So that's anything that, your grandmother wouldn't recognize as foods, these yodely things, anything that is, like has a skew, like a box, anything that's like Doritos are layered in a way with flavor to make them addictive, because we love novelty and taste. So if you could stay away from those kind of things, the ultra processed, and stay away from the inflammatory oils, which are seed oils, which we were told are good for us, canola oil, sunflower oil. These are inflammatory. So stick
Really?
with olive oil and avocado oil for high heat cooking. I do all my baking with avocado oil or coconut oil. I mean, butter's okay too, but that gets into another kind of realm. And move more. And that doesn't mean, going to a boot camp. That name is so dreadful to me. I'm like, why? Isn't life hard enough? Do I now have to go to a boot camp? So I am a big fan of just doing a lot of dog walks and being out and being like, what kind of flower is that? Oh, the sky's pretty, that kind of thing. So if you start with that, staying away from ultra. So we're talking about basics, just sort of as you had indicated, stuff that's not like boxed mac and cheese, stuff that's not, pre-prepared, but really just simple, straightforward foods like they used to eat before there were factories that were designing foods to be addictive. So one of my guests was really cute. She goes, eat less processed foods and take a walk. And I was like, I can get into that. So, not everybody can take a walk, but the idea is it can be pretty simple, and it's also very individual. Like, I'm not the kind of person who is a vegetarian. I've tried it and I don't feel good. So see how you feel on different kinds of, when you eat, how much you eat, and So I would definitely ask you to check in with your gut and your energy level. And the thing that Evelyn Tribole says, which I think is so brilliant, this is about energy and satisfaction. So after you've eaten your meal, whether it's, your kind of equation or whatever else people come up with, the question is, are you feeling energized? Because that's what food is for. And are you feeling satisfied? And so some of that has to do with how fast we're eating, how intentionally we're eating. That's a whole rabbit hole. But those are some things to keep in mind. Many people don't think, oh, I should feel better after I eat, not like, ugh. Self-talk. The first thing I would say is hang around with other zestful women who are doing really cool things, Jen. Like when you're doing your YouTube channel and you're like crushing it, you're not thinking, oh, wow, I really wish I looked like Christy Brinkley. You're like, look at me. This is so cool. And that's what I want people to go for, is what makes you feel alive, grateful to be alive, and just filled with pleasure and appreciation and and love. And so I guess what I would say is, what are you going to do to distract isn't really the right word, but prioritize, like, look what I'm doing now, even though I have cellulite, I have stretch marks, I have whatever, I was joking with my husband because I had to buy underwear for this quick dry underwear for this trip I'm on. I'm like, these are like granny panties, okay? These are going to take up the whole suitcase. We're joking about it. He was just rolling his eyes. I would hang out with women who are not weight obsessed and not like, oh my God, I have to get a tummy tuck, I'm so gross. That's a lot of it. I hang around with women who like to hike and walk and do that stuff. And we don't spend time saying, oh my God, I got a gray hair, So that's that. The other one is, when you recognize you're saying, I am not Christy Brinkley, to catch yourself and wonder who benefits from that. I mean, where did that come from? And what does it cost me to believe that?
Oh,
Because I think what happens then is you can't be fully in your vibrant self, right? If I'm like, I'm never going to be a Christy Brinkley. That's true. But I'll tell you what I will be. I'll be a podcaster who's won awards and who's done this for 6.5 years and got to travel and got to meet the most incredible women. That's what I can tell you. And so I think that that's really what we're talking about, the focus and being aware of this little program that's always running, like, oh, you're not as muscular as your friends, or you're not as pretty as this one, or you're not as smart as that one, to really see if you can flip it and say, yeah, but look what I can do. I'm raising these children that are challenging. I'm, partnered with this person, or, so to be aware is very important, because a lot of this stuff runs like a program in the back. We're so used to thinking it, we don't even realize it anymore. So pay attention to what you're saying to yourself, and then hold it up to the light of day and say, okay, not Christy Brinkley, but who am I and what am I doing? Because it's pretty cool.
I love that. And then another thing that you said was the word pleasure. And I think in our area, when we were growing up, it was, that word is associated with things that sometimes people are like, that's dirty. It's associated with, you know what I mean? And so to say, I can do things that give me pleasure, and that's okay. And it's not only okay, but we should be encouraging it. I think that isn't that important for women?
I think so. And again, I can't focus enough, is finding a community. Again, podcasters, there's a whole emerging community of women over 50 who are like, look at me go. And they're not all climbing Everest. Some of them are just planting gardens that they love, or making tinctures out of herbs. They're like, I've always wanted to do this. I'm dyeing my yarn in my backyard. I'm like, power to you. That's not my thing. But, they're really like, I have time now because, if their kids are launched or they're not partnered anymore, or maybe they're retired, or some are retired, they get to say like, hey, what do I really love to do? And I'm doing it now because these years are so prime, that, in 20, 30 years, I don't know whether I'll be able to hike that long or do whatever. So it's such precious time. We have learned so much. We've proven ourselves to be so resilient, and people call it prime time. You said, oh, well, what's this middle age stuff? You're going to live to 120, but many women are calling it prime time. And the research really supports that.
I love that. Right, because we've got the knowledge. Most of us are financially better off than
That's
we were,
right.
let's be real.
That's right.
And we are able, and it is prime time. I'm running with that. I love it.
That wasn't I didn't make that up, but I
No, but
I did I did take it from somebody who was smart.
was one of the comedy things used to be the not ready for primetime
Oh,
players.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so
yeah.
we are now the
We are
ready for prime.
more
We
than
are the
ready
primetime
because,
players.
you do not get to be this age without life just hitting you on the head with a 2x4. And I've had a lot of challenges and losses in my life, and I really feel like I'm making up for lost time now, and my friends kind of tease me about like, oh, of course she's going to do this. Of course she's doing that. Because, I say yes to a lot of things, but I feel like time is ticking.
Right,
I,
let's
I
do it.
want to be able to try things that I've never tried. And now's the time because it's not going to get easier.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and you know what the other thing too is, since you said, now is the time, pictures. Pictures. If you were a mom, especially, you were taking all the pictures, and that, oh, my hair wasn't good. I'll just take the pictures. But
Mm,
if you look back at the pictures, you're going to think, man, I looked good. I
that's
looked
right.
so good. And I
Anne
think,
Lamott talks about, I was looking at pictures, the writer Anne Lamott, and I was like, oh my gosh, I was so overweight. And she looked at herself and say, what I would do to,
look
look
like that.
so young and lovely and all this stuff. Oh yeah, we're so hard
So
on
I'm
ourselves.
encouraging people now to take all the pictures you can of you and be in those pictures,
That's
because this
great.
is it. This is it. Wherever you're at,
Yeah.
wherever you are, this is the best. And you're just do it, because you're going to be thankful later.
Hmm.
Embrace the parts that
Embrace
you
it.
love,
Yes.
and just ignore your body.
Yeah.
Your body's getting you through the day. You wake up, you can breathe, you can do all these great things that we're talking about,
Hmm.
and you're doing that because of this body. So
It's interesting. I'm going to be doing a presentation on this. I think I mentioned earlier. And one of the things I like to do is do this meditation of a gratitude. And it's especially hard when women get to, you kind of work down the body like, oh, my stomach. Oh, I don't like my stomach. It's flabby. Like, can you offer some gratitude for carrying the babies, for getting you up out of bed? Maybe you can't be in love with it now, but can you just bring some appreciation to it? So we'll do a full body scan of appreciation, and people will, weep because they realize what a antagonistic relationship they have. And the attacker is you. You're attacking yourself. So it's intense.
yeah. Yeah. All right. So before we go, what is one thing that someone can start doing today to really begin the process of rekindling their love for themselves? Because I think that's so
Mm.
important.
Hmm. Um, I love the self-compassion movement. Kristen Neff really spearheaded that. I have found that to be tremendously powerful in my therapy practice and in my own life. I would recommend looking at Kristen Neff's YouTubes. She does these short little YouTubes. She has an autistic son, and she will often talk about some of her challenges and how that becomes a challenge for her self-compassion. I would really look at how can you shift a punitive attitude towards one of, wow, I am really trying. I'm not maybe doing it great every single second, but boy, this is hard. That kind of orientation is so powerful. And actually, research shows that it gets us further than like kicking ourselves in the butt. So I would really recommend looking at, she's got a great workbook on self-compassion, and I can't recommend that enough.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I
Oh, it's so
appreciate you coming
fun.
on. There are so many different things we could talk about, but
Yeah,
I
there
think
are.
that was a good one to cover for today,
Okay,
and
we'll
I'd
start
love to have you
there.
back. So thank you again, Nicole. I'll have all of her information in the show notes. Now, what
Great.
if someone's listening and they think, wait a minute, I would love to work with you? Can they, if they have the information in the show notes?
Yeah, they can. Here's the caveat. Insurance will not cross state lines. So I'm also, I've had a intensive training as a coach, but what we would have to do is we cannot use health insurance if you are not in New York State.
Okay.
That's it's all the COVID-y
Yeah.
insurance stuff, but certainly we can meet, and I do meet with many people through telehealth. So yeah, that's a NicoleChristina.com question more than a ZestfulAging.com question.
Great. All right. Well, then we'll have links to all of the things.
Okay.
And thank you again. I really
My
appreciate your
pleasure,
time.
Jen. Thank you.